This is Optimal Finance Daily, episode 2484. A Funny Thing Happens When You Become Debt-Free by Renee of thefunsizedlife.com. And I'm your host and personal finance enthusiast, Diana Merriam. This podcast is actually one of multiple shows in our network covering different topics like personal development, health, and relationships. So if you like narration-style podcasts, be sure to search for Optimal Living Daily wherever you're hearing this and check out our other shows. But for now, let's get right to today's post as we optimize your life. A Funny Thing Happens When You Become Debt-Free by Renee of thefunsizedlife.com. If you're following me on any form of social media or email, you probably know that Tom and I became debt-free, except for the mortgage, this month. After years and years of working to be more intentional with our money, we finally did it. The funny thing is, 2 months ago, I was in the mindset that we would never be out of debt, that this was just a lifestyle I was going to have to get used to, and we only had $2,000 left to pay off. Talk about a negative Nelly. So what happened after we made that final payment? What drastically changed in our lives within a split second? Well, I'll tell you. 1 month to debt-free. 1 month before we became debt-free, I was living in a semi-constant state of panic, and I didn't even know it. I felt like maybe I should put the kids in public schools so that I could start working during the day. I felt like there was no way I would ever earn enough money to get us out of debt. Again, we had $2,000 left. Even though the blog had been making money, I still couldn't help but doubt myself and see every financial obstacle in my way. I felt like nothing I would ever do would be good enough. Isn't it funny how we do that to ourselves? We work and work for something, reach our goal, and then decide it isn't good enough. That's where I was at. The original plan for homeschooling and blogging was to be able to make money from home with a flexible schedule so that once Desi graduated, the kids and I would be able to travel for school. We could go to Washington, D.C. and learn about our nation's history. Maybe a trip to Gettysburg. Actually, scuba diving at the Great Barrier Reef. Wouldn't that be a dream? That was my original plan, and yet somehow I was constantly working to self-sabotage it. Finally becoming debt-free. As we got closer to the month of February, I started looking at our budget to see where we could scrounge and save in order to make our final debt payment. After all, I was pretty sick of watching all my paychecks go right towards debt. I was able to manage around $1,600 from Tom's paycheck to put towards debt. That brought us so close to our final payment of $2,048. Knowing that I would be receiving a payment from the blog in 5 days, I still felt a little anxious. Yes, it would be more than enough to finish our payment, but I was so tired of waiting. Then it hit me. I already had enough. I had received a payment of around $500 just a few days before. That was enough to pay off our loan and still have some cash left to celebrate with. I texted Tom with the exciting news and asked him if he wanted me to wait for him to make our final payment. He said yes, so I waited. My little secret. Even though we were so close to paying off our final debt that we'd been working so hard to tackle, I still had this nagging feeling in the back of my mind. You see, 10 days earlier, I had purchased a brand new laptop. I wanted to be able to make more money with the blog, create better content and videos. If I was going to do that, then I definitely needed a new laptop. So I bought the laptop with a credit card. I told myself this debt was a business debt. It didn't really count towards our final debt payment. Yet, as I sat there so ready to make a final payment to this debt that we had been working on over the last year, I still felt anxious. I felt anxious because my brain was still trying to process how I was going to pay off that laptop and make sure we could still make our road trip to California to see our families. My brain was still anxious because I wouldn't actually be debt-free. So I wiped down my laptop, charged it up, and put it back in the box. The kids and I headed back to the Apple store and I returned it. Now what? Almost instantly, I realized how many things I had been panicking about over the last few months. Suddenly, my world felt full of possibilities. After all, from here on out, all of our money would actually be ours, except that mortgage. Yeah, I know. I had recently put in applications for our kids to the local charter school. Once we paid off debt, I realized I didn't want them to go there. It was like I remembered my dream. I stopped working so much, and yet now the blogs seem to be doing better than ever. Weird. I'm happier. I sip my coffee and actually taste it. I'm reading my Bible again without it feeling like an obligation. The kids and I are reading more together. We have more fun. Our lives are suddenly filled with freedom and possibility. What can you do? Get yourself out of debt. It'll be hard. You will struggle. It will be worth it. You just listened to the post titled, "A Funny Thing Happens When You Become Debt-Free" by Renee of the FunSizedLife.com.
Reboot your credit card with Apple Card. It gives you unlimited daily cash back that can earn 4.15% annual percentage yield when you open a savings account. A high-yield, low-effort way to grow your money with no fees. Apply for Apple Card now in the Wallet app on iPhone to start earning and growing your daily cash with savings today. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners, subject to eligibility. Savings accounts by Goldman Sachs Bank USA. Member FDIC. Terms apply.
Labor strikes, climate change, your beat-up office printer. What do they all have in common? Come on, it's all about the money. Economics is everywhere and everything fueling our lives, even where we least expect it. If you're a fan of Optimal Finance Daily and are curious to learn something new and exciting about economics every week, I recommend you listen to the Planet Money podcast from NPR. Planet Money is a different kind of world where the complex economy actually makes sense, where human stories supersede abstract theories. Listeners can learn, laugh, and be entertained. It's econ, down to earth, and Planet Money answers some of life's burning questions, like, will AI take over our jobs? Why are Christmas trees so darn expensive? The Planet Money team lives to tell a good story in around 30 minutes. It's econ for the rest of us. Tune into Planet Money every week for entertaining stories and insights about how money shapes our world. Stories that can't be found anywhere else. Listen now to Planet Money from NPR, wherever you get your podcasts. I think getting out of debt was my favorite part of cleaning up my finances. A friend of mine even took a video to celebrate my final debt payment. It's up on the Economy Conference YouTube channel if you want to check it out. But what stood out to me most about the post today was when Renee said, quote, "Isn't it funny how we do that to ourselves? We work and work for something, reach our goal, and then decide it isn't good enough," end quote. I can relate to this so much. I've always been a goal-oriented person, but I found that any sense of achievement I get is usually pretty short-lived. According to happiness expert Jillian Mandich, this is a pretty normal experience. She says that only 10% of our happiness is determined by our circumstances, while 40% of our happiness is determined by our everyday thoughts and behavior, and 50% of our happiness is genetically determined. Reaching a big milestone like getting out of debt falls in that 10% circumstance bucket. In order to experience true lasting happiness, we need to focus on that 40% bucket of daily life, how we're spending our time, our behavior, and our thoughts. As much as our goals might require some sacrifice, I often have to remind myself that figuring out how to enjoy the journey is even more important than reaching a certain goal. And that's a wrap for another Monday show. Have a great rest of your day and start to your week. And I'll be back tomorrow where your optimal life awaits.